Hey guys, welcome back to part 3 of the Microsoft Flight Simulator Dev Series. So where we left off last time is we finally got this guy integrated into the game and started using Aircraft Editor. So while you guys have been away, let me go ahead and show you a couple things that I did do there in the Aircraft Editor. So I already have it pulled up here. So I went ahead and completely fixed the weight and balance on this guy. As you can see, I added more contact points to make sure this thing is definitely contacting the ground at every position that I could think possible that it would be contacting the ground. And even in the props, I added 1, 2, 3, and 4 areas where if the prop's spinning extremely fast, it would either contact if you yawed into something or would say up and down. So I made sure to cover all 4 points there. I went ahead and added a couple more things in fuel and geometry of this guy. And then let me show you something here. So in flight tuning, for example, where we had all of our lift, scalar, our drag, our effectiveness, and our stabilities, I reset everything down to 1. So 1 is a good place to start out with. Once again, I don't know exactly what kind of aircraft this would be relating to in real life, but if you get your geometry right on this guy, and like I said, I really went in here and I tried to match the wings as close as I could, and spent some time here messing with the surface area of this and really tried to match some things here. Like I said, it's not perfect because this isn't a permanent project I'm working on here. It's just for you guys for this tutorial. But I went ahead here and did as much as I could. So I reset those flight tunings down to 1.0 and took her on a test flight, and she was pretty good. And like I said, if you had real world experience and you're like, wow, the ailerons aren't effective enough, you could go ahead and bump that up. But a good base for every model is 1.0. I went ahead and touched the reference speeds a little bit and did everything. I pretty much just went through all these and made sure I touched every single thing on them. I even went into lighting here and made sure that my lights were located in the right area, and I even put some landing lights and taxi lights under the wheel here if we ever decide to do that in the future. But yeah, we'll move on, and I even edited the cameras. Okay, so I deleted a lot of them because like I said, this is a pretty simple model just for you guys, and but now we have a working cockpit camera. So as you can see, I finally got to sit in the seat here, and it is an extremely ugly aircraft, but you know, at least we got a yoke. We got a yoke to do some animation work on, so that will be pretty fun when we get to the interior of this guy. Yeah, so let's jump into today's topic, which is going to be animations, okay? So animations is done in 3 ways. It is done through the game engine or Microsoft Flight Simulator. It is done in Blender when you actually animate the model itself. And then the most important part is it is done in these XML. Let me pull that up here. Sorry, don't got it ready for you. It is done in the XML, the model XML file, okay? And I forgot to re-edit this back when I left last time. Make that quick change here. Remember that from episode 1, I'm sure you do. Okay, in the XML file. So the XML file is the glue between the game engine and your model from Blender. So as you can see here, there is a lot of code going on, and it does get hard to read. But in this form, it is actually the easiest one to read. There's a lot going on, okay? So, for example, it's using templates, Asobo templates. You got your gear template, your right tire template, our propeller template. If you go up top, you got handling templates like the elevator, the rudder, the aileron, the flaps. Okay, and these are easy. Like, for example, the flap template, that's all you got to have to get flaps working in the game using these Asobo templates. But if we look at, for example, let's go into a project that I admire a lot. India Fox Techno, they made an MB339, and these guys, man, that model is incredible, and it holds a lot of awesome information in it if you go to its model and go down to its exterior XML. But they didn't use templates. They used everything with custom animation coding, okay? So everything they did, they tied it to a sim variable in-game. And this is a great example of something that you can scrub through. If you can't get something working with a Asobo template, and you just want something working that is custom animation coding, whether that's referencing an aircraft variable here, or let's see if I can find one here. They have a guess I can't find one off the bat, but if you don't see an A here, it's an L. It's a local variable, which they have even done themselves. So there is a lot of stuff inside other creation, like other dev work that you can go through. And don't ever think that this is some kind of stealing. If you find something that works for an elevator key in one of here, the only part that these guys really did is they named this elevator key in Blender. Okay, you're going to have to generate your own GUID online, which I will demonstrate here later. But this main beef, this taco right here, this is exactly everything that every plane will ever need if you want your elevators to move in the game. So this isn't any kind of stealing from someone else's model XML. Just, you know, make it easier on yourself. Why write it when you can go find it? Okay, so it's a good example to be keeping a variety of aircraft in your inventory that you can go look on. For example, if I'm going to make a water aircraft, I'm going to go ahead and look in the Goose and see kind of what they did in the Goose to make that thing really water reliable. Okay, so you got tons of references when it comes to animation coding. Let's go back to where we were. So we're going to be talking about templates, and the Asobo templates is the easiest way you can get something working in the game. Okay, so let's go ahead back here into Blender. And something I had to do, which unfortunately this model didn't have originally, was I had to separate the control surfaces. So as you can see here, I can click on each individual one now. It wasn't like that, so I had to spend, 15 minutes or so before this tutorial to start separating these from their base. And to do so, all I really did was go to a straight view here. Let's say I want to separate this part of the wing for some reason, make it foldable. I can go to edit mode. I turned on X-ray, which toggles everything in between. And like I said, I'm not really going to be teaching you guys how to do Blender. You should know Blender for the most part. I selected, you can choose, let's see here, I'm not even on the right piece, there we go. You can choose vertices, face, or edges, and I went ahead and chose face. I think I completely screwed this up. I gotta select this at the beginning, go into edit mode, there we go. That looks a little bit more better. And then I went ahead and went to faces, and let's say this was the aileron. I went ahead and selected the entire aileron, which selected the whole thing through, just like you saw there. I right-clicked, separated, and I separated the selection into its own object. Okay, so I went along and did that to all the control surfaces to make sure that we had this working for the tutorial. I may upload this again, but like I said, this is someone else's work. I really don't want to re-upload this. So if you guys don't understand and need a more basis for Blender, go ahead and drop a comment. I'll try to help you as much as I can, but for the most part, these are just things you need to learn with overall Blender usage, which you could find these tutorials online pretty easily. So let's go into animating. So we have our left and right aileron. Let's go ahead and start there. So we'll go to our left aileron. We'll go into our animation tab if you haven't done so already, and we'll make sure our animation is from 0 to 100. Now, how do you know it's going to be 0 from 100? Why can't you do 0 to 200? Well, if we go back here in the animation, we are using templates, and unfortunately the template doesn't describe how long this animation needs to be. It just says, hey, you're using this template, dude. And you're like, wow, that didn't help much. But if you go, for example, to the MB339, this is all custom coding. So he said, hey, my elevator template is actually 100 keyframes long. The length of it is 100 keyframes long. And he could have put like 1,000 keyframes long, and he could have had 1,000 long animation in here, okay? But that's because he did custom animation. So how do you find these templates? You know, how do you make sure that you know exactly what these templates are using? So I made this little dev series working project XML file, which I'll probably include, which includes some samples. For example, a custom animation sample, a deflection sample, a mouse clickable sample, a landing gear sample. But it also has the Asobo animation template example, and it didn't have anything. You're like, what is this? You know, this is a file path. So just like you go to your community folder in Microsoft Flight Simulator, you go back one to official. So let's go ahead and go to our community folder in Microsoft Flight Simulator. You know, that really ugly long line in your app data. Yeah. So let's go ahead and go up one. Go to official instead of community. Go to one store. Go down till you see FS. And then look for SF Base Aircraft Common, okay? And this is going to be the one store files that hold pretty much all your model behavior definitions, your flight states library definitions, and your checkpoints. So going a little off topic here, for example, if I go to flight states library, and let's say I'm making a jet, it will have the default FLT files that you'll be wanting to include in your project. Now, what are FLT files? Like I said, we'll delve into these a little bit later, but these are just telling you exactly what state the aircraft is in various phases of flight, okay? So in its final phase of flight, in its hangar phase of flight, in its runway phase of flight. So, you know, for example, most people start out the game loaded up on a runway. So runway's a big one. You know, that's included with a lot of exporters, like the legacy importer people use for Flight Simulator X models. It makes you include a runway in order to even get that thing working in the game. So these FLT files, you can always find them in here. And then, so let's go to the big one, the model behaviors definition, okay? So if you go in there and you go to Asobo, you have tons of stuff, okay? Airliner, common, generic. You're like, wow, how do I know which one to open? Well, whatever XML file that you are working with, in this case we are working with, I closed it on accident, our DA62 stuff. If you use any of these template files, you have to use a behavior file. And like I said, the behaviors are referenced in here in the model behavior definitions. And how do you know which one they used? Well, it says up here, behaviors include model behavior file Asobo exterior XML. So you're like, oh, it's just Asobo exterior. So once again, we're in Asobo. Oh, there it is, exterior. Okay, so we click on exterior. And this will take that template, whatever we're using. For example, let's go to handling. What we're working on are ailerons, right? So this aileron template, okay? Let's go back into that exterior XML. Close a couple of these things so it's not so confusing here. And let's go find our aileron. So as you can see here, they've included lines of sections. So there's the propeller, there's the gears, there's some more gears, there's the ailerons. Okay, this is what we're looking for. So template, aileron, template. Okay, cool. So we finally found the reference for this handling aileron template. Okay, and so these animation name left and animation name right, that is extremely important. This is telling you what animation name you need to be putting in this thing in order to make it work. So let's go ahead and start that. We'll go into Blender. Oh yeah, we were focusing on the length. Sorry, I kind of got out of control here. We'll go down a little bit more, and as you can see here, the animation name left, or aileron left deflection. You're like, man, I need to find the length. Well, there it is. Remember, this looks very familiar. This line right here, doesn't that look like something you know? Yeah, it looks like a custom animation line, which it is. All this is you're referencing their custom animations line, and you're making it easier on yourself and including just a template line. So you're saving yourselves a lot of hard work by doing it this way. And in here they had length of 100. So you're like, oh, awesome. So now I know the length. So you know you need to have 100 frames for this animation, and you need to name the left one, left aileron % key, and the right one, right aileron % key. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and animate this left aileron here. So if we click on the left aileron, we need to make sure that we're in the animation tab once again, and let's go ahead and add our keying set. So in this case, I'll just do location and rotation. To be safe, you can always add more keying sets, like if you change the scale for some reason or just want to do rotation. And then we're going to go ahead to go to keyframe 50, which is our neutral position, and add a keyframe. So insert keyframe, there's a little plus next to the key sign. Then we'll go to keyframe 0, which is the beginning of the animation. And let's go ahead and change this down to 20 degrees. Go ahead and add that animation. So now we got down to our neutral position, and then we'll go to 100 keyframes to finish her out and go negative 20 degrees. Alright, so just like an aileron would work, we have our animation from 0 to 100, with 50 being the neutral position. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to drop this to an NLA track. And an NLA track is exactly how a Microsoft Flight Simulator disseminates the animation name in your model. Okay, so in this case we need to name this the left aileron % key. Let's go ahead and copy that and then drop this down right here with a push down action. So we create a new action, and the NLA track, which is the animation itself, as you can see the animation data is inside of that. We need to name that to left aileron % key. Now let's go ahead and file save this and then export it to our DA62 LOD00. And now if we go in game, we rebuild our package. Stop doing that. We rebuild our package. We will see that our left aileron is now animated, but it is not moving. If I use my control stick, I cannot get this thing to move. So we are missing a step. And let me go ahead and explain exactly what we're missing, since we are using a template. Okay, so what we were missing is if we go ahead and look here in our template name and all the way to the default template parameters, you can see they included the anime name left and right, which we went ahead and named our aileron for now. So if we go back to the DA62, we can see that in our aileron we just use template, our name, and that was it. So what we need to do is we need to go to this exterior, we need to copy these two lines right here, go back to it and enter, paste these two lines in there just like that. And now if we go to File, Save, go back into the game, build our package, you will see that we were at the neutral position now, which is very good news, and I can move my left aileron. So it gets really complicated when you start to use certain templates and how you're doing things, and exactly what pieces that you're missing in the original DA62, especially if you name them certain ways. But let's go ahead and jump into our second example. So let me pause that so the sound's not blasting in my ear here of the engine idle. And we'll go back into Blender here. For some odd reason I accidentally opened up a second one. Okay, so we just finished the left side. So for the right side, I'm going to show you a different example, a way we can do this without the templates, okay? So once again, let's go ahead and go to the right side, and we're going to animate this once again. So we'll go to 50, go ahead and add that keyframe. And remember, ailerons are opposite, so when this one goes down, this one needs to go up, right? So we'll go ahead and change that to -20, not 20, and add that keyframe for keyframe 0, and then for keyframe 100, we'll go ahead and change that to 20, add the keyframe. So now we have our two ailerons moving. But we're going to be doing this a little differently than what you normally should do. So in a normal scenario, this will work right here with our left and right aileron key, as long as I dropped this in my NLA track and named it right aileron % key down here. But we're not going to do it that way because I want to be showing you guys how to do a custom animation in your project. So this is why I use Notepad++. You know, you can go ahead and minus things. So you can minus each individual section to kind of see what templates they're using. It's much more efficient, as you can see here. And so I can really see what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is after my behaviors line, because this is saying that in my behavior, like we were talking about, the Isobo exterior XML, we are using all these templates inside that. Okay, so if you use a different model behavior file and reference something else, you need to create a new behaviors, include that one, and then all the templates in that behavior, and then close the behaviors file in the XML. So let's go ahead and go after behaviors, and we're going to do custom animation scripting like they did in here, okay? And so this is because I want to include this part specifically on how this is used in the simulator as well, because there are some great projects like this MB339, which is created basically on custom animation coding. So let's go here and copy their line for the right aileron key. And this is a great example because in our aileron template, if we look here, we have right aileron % key, okay? And so the way this one's been named out, if I paste that in between behaviors and model info, is it's just right aileron key, okay? So we can even change this to something else, like right aileron badass, okay? So we got right aileron badass as our animation name now. So let's go ahead and drop this and name it right aileron badass, okay? And then we go back into here and we need to generate a GUID, okay? So this is a specific individual code that is recognized for each individual piece by the game engine. I mean, there's real deep stuff here. I don't want to go too crazy into it, but each part needs to have its separate GUID code so that the game engine does not confuse it with something else. So you need to generate one. So what you have to do, let's go ahead and remove this code because this will confuse this thing with the MB339 if I decide to use it. And let's go ahead and go online and go to a GUID generator. So to do this, I just went to Google, searched GUID generator, went to my generator tool, and then I can just refresh the page as many times as I want and it will generate GUIDs. Once I find one that I like, I just hit copy and paste it in here. And then we're going to set our length to 100 because already in here we did 100 length for the keyframes, if you remember that. And then we need to change the type to parameter name to right aileron badass, which is the same as the animation name here. And we want it to autoplay, okay? And then in here we need to change the name of the part info once again to right aileron badass. Animation length once again is 100, And this is talking about setting the sim variable of the aileron right deflection. Now, a lot of you guys don't really know what this part means, so I'm going to do my best to really explain this and how these are working. Okay, so when you installed the SDK, there was something in the Microsoft Flight Simulator SDK folder in the samples called SimVar Watcher. Now in SimVar Watcher, if you go in there, you go to bin, you go to x64, you go to release, and you open up this SimVar X, it's going to open up this application. In this application, this is what you are using to look up all the simulation variables, okay? So it's just a SimConnect product. So if I actually went into the game here, let me go ahead and make this not full screen so we can kind of see what we're doing. Okay, so once we got this open, we'll go ahead and hit connect up here on the SimVar Watcher, and that, as you can see, it's flashing blue green. We are now connected in the game. And so what I was trying to show you is example, if we go down to aileron, that was our left deflection. And you can set the units to really whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. But we were using grads on this, and I'll just go ahead and add that request. In the game, as you can see, if I move that down, we get to -27. If we move that up, I get to +16. So it kind of shows you what kind of variable, and like I said, that's based on the units. Like if I change that grads to like a gallon, I don't know why I would ever do that, but I can do that. You can see that it changes my gallons to -115 and +69. Okay. So what I'm trying to go with is here, this shows all your SimVar names. So these are things that are the what the sim is using as variables, and then referencing your XML animation. So in this case, we need to reference our right deflection PCT. And I believe this one already has, or not our PCC, but just our aileron right deflection. So this is exactly how they found their variable when they were going through this. And like I said, this whole project here is made in custom. So there's even like trailing edge flaps right percent for this flap percent key. And so they've gone deep into here and they have found, you know, the trailing edge right here, right percent. So they've gone deep into this thing and made sure they found the right variable for everything they're doing, okay? So now that you kind of understand how that works, let's go back to our DA62. We'll finish this out real quick. So we got our right aileron badass. We got a 100 length variable of our aileron right deflection, in which we found that in here, just kind of how I showed you guys how things are found. And we got our units set as grads, a scale of -1, and a bias of 50. And you can even add other things in here like a lag, which will move the animation slower. For example, I was using a beacon light switch for my canopy on my glider. And so when you hit the beacon light, it opens up the canopy. Unfortunately, just like a regular light switch, when you hit that, it just popped open, and you're like, "Whoa, man! I kind of want I want it to open slowly. You know, I just don't want to pop open, pop off like a switch." So I put a lag line in here instead of bias. I put lag, and the lower the lag number, it's like golf. The lower, the slower, the higher, you know, the faster. So I put a lag in there of about 20, and it opened up real nice and slow. And yeah, and I can actually show you in here. So if I go to my discus, I go to the bottom here, and let's go to my dash animation. For example, I put a lag in here of 17, okay? And I was using, like I said, I use the lights. So I use the nav light for the dash animation, and then up here on the canopy animation, I use the beacon light, okay? And then I also added these mouse reticule callback which is just letting it be clickable. So if you like clickable stuff in your cockpit, which we'll get later into when we start delving into our dashboard and getting our gauges working, there is clickables. So these are some more lines that you can add to make things clickable. Okay, so the way we have this set up is it should work like this. So we'll go ahead and hit save. We'll go ahead and hit in Blender. We'll make sure that is named right, Aileron Badass, which it is. We'll go ahead and hit save, export. Go back in game. We're going to rebuild that package. Okay. And as you can see here, we have our left and right. And it looks like, as you can see here, I have animated these in a very weird way. And that is specifically because the animation, so when you're doing this with two template items, for example, if I was, we'll do it right now. So, but now you can see how it works. I got one working right now with custom animation coding and one working with the template animation coding. So we're going to do a quick change here, okay? We're going to rename this right animation % key. We're going to change it from right Aileron Badass to the right Aileron % key. Just a simple name change. Export. And we can actually keep this line. It's not doing anything, so you can keep it in there if you want. I'll show you, it just ignores it. That's kind of why all these other things like the elevator and rudder, they're still coded in here, but they're not doing anything because our model doesn't have anything in it that activates it. So right now we only have our Aileron % key right and left that activate it. So yeah, it doesn't really do anything. So let's go back into the game, show you that just that quick name change if I rebuild my package here. So as you can see here, we have our left and right working the way they should be working, okay? And I think the reason why they're both going down and both going up is because the way the template works, if I go down on the left, I go up on the right, and because it's just inversing the animation of the other piece, while if I was doing the custom animation and I was going down, it wasn't telling the right to reverse, and it was just activating the negative unit value, which we were talking about in the SimVar watcher as these change, and it was just animating the other side to go down as well. So that's why I was saying there's really to save some work in here, and you can see in this exterior they've gone through a lot of this stuff to really find out how these things moved. And that's why you could kind of see if I have the if I was using this animation instead, the scale was a little bit differently than the template, and it was moving a little bit differently, okay? So depending on how you set these things up, they do move differently. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to be going for this. We're going pretty far on our time for the tutorial, but I've basically kind of led into animation here, explain the XML process, how you can really set things up to start animating them in game. And like I said, this is a rough subject, man, and figuring out how to do these XML scripts and get them working with your Blender model is going to be a ride. And when I'm saying a ride is you're going to put something in here sometime and your game won't even build the package because now something's not working, or you change something in here, you messed up a spelling, put two I's, you didn't even notice it. Next thing you know, your animation's not working, you don't know why. or even you start taking stuff out of here and you forgot to generate your own GUID, and you're like, wow, what the freak is going on? So this is going to be a ride, and like I said, the best way to do stuff is to go into the models that you already have inside your downloads, you know, some other awesome projects, and really start looking in these ones, because you got some projects like the MB339, which went straight animation coding, and then you got other projects like the Cree, I think was a one that also did that. Make sure here. So they also did their own custom animation coding in here, but they laid theirs up a different way. They put all their animation lines before, and then they put all their animation sequences after. Okay, so you can really start looking into how these other guys did their animation coding, and then you can even take a project like let's do the Savage Gravel, and he used all templates. So this is a good thing to see. You can start seeing how they use templates. He even has the invert animation true here. So what he did was, I think both of his ailerons both went up and down at the same time in Blender instead of opposite like ours did, and he's just inverting the animation of each side. So yeah, so you can really kind of see how people have built things, what specific model behaviors they're including. And if you start taking stuff out of here, let's say you want to use one of these templates, you can just copy and paste that over, because all the templates are exactly the same. So yeah, I hope you guys learned a lot today, and especially a little bit about animation techniques. And there is going to be trials, there is going to be failures, and trust me, I know after posting this video I'm going to be getting a million questions, because it is not an easy topic. But yeah, let's go ahead and finally take this for a test ride with our ailerons working, okay? Well, you look at that. It's starting to look a little bit more like an aircraft, right? And crash it into the ground. Alright guys, thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time on episode 4, where we might delve a little bit deeper into some animation stuff for some specifics, but for the most part I think we'll start jumping into our propeller animation, our wheel animation, and some other things that require a little bit more than just a template or custom animation profile, you know, textures and things like that. So thank you for tuning in today. I hope you guys learned something, and see you next time.